The crystalline spires of Zalari Prime pierced the violet sky like frozen lightning, their surfaces reflecting the twin suns that bathed the alien world in ethereal light. Evan Trace adjusted his formal diplomatic attire as his transport descended toward the capital city, his stomach tight with anticipation. This was the opportunity of a lifetime, the first human invited to observe the Unity Summit, the most sacred gathering in Zalari society. Remember, Mr. Trace, Ambassador Rodriguez had briefed him before departure, you're there purely as an observer. The Zalari have agreed to this historic first step, but any interference could set back human-Zalari relations by decades. Now, standing in the vast ceremonial hall carved from living crystal, Evan felt the weight of that responsibility. The chamber soared hundreds of feet overhead, its walls pulsing with bioluminescent patterns that responded to the gathered crowd's emotions. Thousands of Zalari filled the tiered seats, their pale blue skin luminescent in the shifting light, creating a sea of ethereal beauty. The Zalari were magnificent, tall and elegant, with elongated limbs and graceful movements that seemed to flow like water. Their eyes, large and expressive, held depths of ancient wisdom. Most striking were their varied hair colors, silver, gold, deep purple, and brilliant red curls that seemed to move with lives of their own. At the center of the chamber, the High Council sat in robes of shimmering fabric that changed color with each breath. Evan recognized several faces from his briefings, but his attention was drawn to one figure in particular, Ambassador Tvalora, heir to the most powerful house on Zalari Prime. She was breathtaking. Her skin held a deeper blue tint than others, marking her noble lineage, while her hair blazed like liquid copper in elaborate curls that framed her angular face. Her eyes, when they briefly met his across the chamber, were the color of Arctic ice, beautiful but utterly cold. Tvalora was known throughout both human and Zalari diplomatic circles for her brilliant mind and complete emotional control. She had never shown interest in the mating bonds that were so central to Zalari culture, focusing instead on her political career. Some whispered she was incapable of the deep emotional connection required for such unions. The ceremony began with ancient chants that resonated through the crystal walls, creating harmonics that Evan felt in his bones. He watched, mesmerized, as various Zalari nobles came forward to announce political alliances, trade agreements, and occasionally, the rare and sacred mating bonds that would unite two houses. Then something unexpected happened. Tvalora rose from her seat on the High Council, her movements drawing every eye in the chamber. She walked with purpose down the steps, her robes trailing behind her like liquid starlight. The crowd fell silent, sensing something momentous. She walked directly to Evan. Before he could react, she took his hand in hers, her skin cool and smooth against his palm. Her voice rang out in perfect Zalari, the words carrying clearly through the crystal chamber. This human is my chosen. My mate. The silence that followed was deafening. Then chaos erupted throughout the hall. The private chambers of the Zalari High Council buzzed with tension as nobles from every major house demanded answers. Evan sat in an ornate chair that seemed to mold itself to his body, still reeling from the events in the ceremonial hall. Through the translucent walls, he could see heated discussions taking place in adjacent rooms. "You've created quite the situation," came a voice from behind him. Evan turned to see Tvalora entering the chamber, her expression unreadable. She had changed from her ceremonial robes into a simple but elegant gown that clung to her curves, the fabric shifting from deep blue to silver as she moved. "I didn't create anything," Evan replied, standing to face her. "You're the one who claimed you as my mate, yes." Her voice was steady, but Evan caught something in her eyes, vulnerability. "Do you know what that means in our culture?" Before he could answer, the chamber door burst open. Chancellor Vextar, Tvalora's primary political rival, strode in with several other nobles. His skin was a darker blue than Tvalora's, and his silver hair was braided with symbols of his house. "This farce ends now," Vextar declared, his voice carrying the authority of his position. "You cannot mate with an alien, Tvalora. The council will never accept it." "The ancient laws say nothing about species," Tvalora replied coolly. "Only about the sacred bond between two souls. Don't quote law to me, child. Your house may be powerful, but this goes too far. As the argument escalated, Evan found himself studying Tvalora's profile. Even in conflict, she was magnificent, her jaw set with determination, her eyes blazing with inner fire. But why had she chosen him? They barely knew each other. The meeting dissolved into chaos as more nobles arrived, each voicing their outrage. Finally, Tvalora raised her hand for silence. I invoke the right of solitude, she announced. 24 hours to commune with my chosen, as is tradition. The nobles reluctantly agreed, filing out with muttered threats and promises of consequences. When they were alone, Tvalora's composed facade cracked slightly. I apologize for involving you in this, she said softly, moving closer to him. But I had no choice. Why? Evan asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Why me? She looked up at him, her ice-blue eyes now warm with emotion. Because you're the only one who sees me as more than just a political tool. When we spoke at the embassy reception last month, you asked about my dreams, my hopes, not my voting record or my family's mining rights. The memory came flooding back, a brief conversation at a diplomatic function, her surprising laugh at his joke about human coffee preferences. He had thought about that moment many times since. Tvalora. He began, but she stepped closer, close enough that he could feel the warmth radiating from her alien skin. In your language, my name means strong heart, she whispered. But around you, it feels fragile. Tvalora's private estate sat on the edge of the crystal city, its organic architecture growing from the living rock like a beautiful parasite. Evan marveled at the way the walls breathed with soft light, responding to their occupants' emotions. Right now, the chambers glowed with a warm amber that spoke of growing intimacy. Your home is incredible, Evan said, running his fingers along a wall that pulsed gently at his touch. It's been in my family for 3,000 years, Tvalora replied, watching him with fascination. Each generation adds to it, but it remains essentially the same. Like our traditions. She paused, her expression becoming uncertain. Perhaps that's why I need change so desperately. She had changed into flowing robes that left her shoulders bare, revealing the intricate patterns that naturally marked her skin, swirling designs that seemed to shift and dance in the light. Evan found himself mesmerized by the play of color across her blue flesh. Tell me about human bonding rituals, she said, settling onto a cushioned alcove that formed itself around her body. I've studied your diplomatic protocols, but I know nothing of your intimate customs. Heat rose in Evan's cheeks. We don't have anything as formal as your mate claiming. Usually, there's dating, courtship, maybe marriage. Dating? The word sounded exotic in her accent. Spending time together, learning about each other, sharing experiences. He moved closer, drawn by her genuine curiosity. Like this, actually. Tvalora smiled, the first truly unguarded expression he'd seen from her. Then we are, dating? I suppose we are. He sat beside her, the living furniture accommodating both their forms. Though usually it doesn't start with a public declaration in front of thousands of people. She laughed, a sound like crystalline chimes. I may have been somewhat impulsive. Why? The question had been burning in him since the ceremony. You could have anyone. Why choose me? Tvalora's expression grew serious. She reached out, her cool fingers tracing the line of his jaw. Because when you look at me, you see Tvalora. Not the heir, not the political asset, not the perfect ambassador. Just, me. The walls around them shifted to deeper gold, responding to the emotion in the room. Evan felt something profound settling between them, not just attraction, but recognition. As if they had been searching for each other across the vast distances between worlds. I've never felt this way before, she admitted, her voice barely audible. In our culture, emotions are controlled, channeled, used for political advantage. But with you. With me, what? With you, I feel like I'm drowning in the most beautiful way possible." The space between them disappeared. Evan cupped her face in his hands, marveling at the softness of her skin, the way her eyes fluttered closed at his touch. When their lips met, it was like completing a circuit, the walls around them blazed with brilliant light, and Evan felt as if he were touching starfire. Tvalora gasped against his mouth, her hands fisting in his shirt. "The house responds to bonded pairs," she breathed. "It recognizes true connection." "Is that what this is?" Evan asked, pulling her closer until she was pressed against his chest. "I don't know," she whispered. "But I want to find out." The ancient ritual grounds of Zalari Prime were carved directly into the planet's core crystal, their surfaces alive with energy that had pulsed for millennia. Evan stood at the center of the circular chamber, acutely aware of the hundreds of eyes watching him from the carved galleries above. This was where Tvalora's claim would be tested, where their bond would either be proven authentic or destroyed forever. "The challenge of hearts has not been invoked in over 2 centuries, Chancellor Vextar announced, his voice echoing off the crystal walls. "But ancient law is clear, any may question a mating bond through trial." Tvalora stood across from Evan, resplendent in ritual armor that seemed to be made of living light. Her red curls were braided with crystal threads that caught and reflected the chamber's glow. When their eyes met, Evan felt the same electric connection that had been growing between them over the past days. "The trials will test your bond in 3 ways, Vextar continued. Physical harmony, emotional resonance, and spiritual unity. Fail any one, and the bond is declared false. The first trial was combat, not against each other, but as partners against holographic opponents. Evan had no experience with Zalari weapons, but Tvalora guided him with touches and whispered instructions. As they moved together, dodging energy blasts and returning fire, their movements became synchronized in ways that surprised even the watching nobles. "You're in my head," Tvalora gasped as they took cover behind a crystal barrier. "You're in mine," Evan replied, somehow knowing exactly when she would break cover for her next attack. The second trial was emotional. They were separated and subjected to illusions designed to break their connection. Evan found himself in a perfect recreation of Earth, complete with his family and friends begging him to abandon this alien obsession. But even in the false reality, he could feel Tvalora's presence like a warm star in his chest. When they were reunited, both were trembling. Tvalora threw herself into his arms, her composed facade completely shattered. "I saw them taking you away," she sobbed against his chest. "I saw you forgetting me, choosing your own kind." "Never," Evan whispered fiercely, burying his face in her hair. "I could never forget you." The final trial was the most intimate. They were required to share their deepest souls, their most private thoughts, in front of the entire assembly. In Zalari culture, this level of vulnerability was reserved for true mates. Tvalora went first, opening her mind completely. Evan felt her loneliness, her years of political isolation, her secret dreams of exploring the galaxy. But underneath it all was a blazing truth: she loved him completely, desperately, with a passion that had transformed her from the inside out. When Evan reciprocated, sharing his own heart, the chamber filled with light. The crystal walls resonated with their connection, creating harmonics that brought tears to many eyes. Even Vextar seemed moved by the display. "The bond is proven," the Chancellor announced reluctantly. "The trials are complete." That night, in the privacy of Tvalora's chambers, they came together with a passion that shook the very foundations of the living building. Her skin was like silk beneath his hands, her responses so honest and uninhibited that Evan felt humbled by her trust. "I love you," she whispered against his ear as they moved together, their bodies finding a rhythm as natural as breathing. "I love you too," he replied, and meant it with every fiber of his being. The house around them sang with their union, its walls pulsing with colors that had never been seen before, the unique signature of an interspecies bond that would change both their worlds forever. 6 months later, the grand ceremonial hall had been transformed. Where once only Zalari nobles had gathered, now representatives from both Earth and Zalari Prime filled the crystal seats. The walls pulsed with harmonious patterns, reflecting the historic nature of the occasion, the first official human-Zalari bonding ceremony. Evan stood at the center of the chamber, wearing robes that combined human and Zalari design elements. The fabric seemed to breathe with its own life, shifting from deep blue to silver as his emotions changed. Beside him, Tvalora was radiant in traditional bonding attire, her red curls adorned with crystals that caught and amplified the chamber's light. Today, we witness not just the union of two hearts, the high priest intoned, but the bridging of two worlds. The first children of this bond will carry the hopes of both species in their blood. The ceremony was beautiful, blending ancient Zalari traditions with human customs. They exchanged vows in both languages, their words creating visible patterns in the air as the chamber's crystals responded to their voices. When Tvalora spoke her promises in perfect English, Evan felt his heart swell with pride and love. "I promise to be your partner in all things," she said, her voice carrying clearly through the vast space. "To share your dreams, your fears, your hopes for the future. To stand with you against any challenge, as we have already proven we can." Ambassador Rodriguez, who had arrived from Earth for the ceremony, stepped forward with the human rings, simple bands of platinum that looked almost primitive next to the elaborate Zalari ceremonial jewelry. But when Tvalora slipped the ring onto Evan's finger, the metal began to glow with its own inner light, transformed by contact with their bond. "The artifacts recognize true union," the high priest announced with surprise. "The bond transforms even inanimate objects." The political implications were staggering. Chancellor Vextar, who had initially opposed the union, now spoke of the economic opportunities that would arise from closer human-Zalari cooperation. Trade agreements were being drafted, cultural exchange programs established, and plans made for joint space exploration missions. But for Evan and Tvalora, the politics faded into background noise. As they completed the final ritual, drinking from the ceremonial cup that symbolized shared life, they were aware only of each other. "Mrs. Trace," Evan whispered as they sealed their bond with a kiss that sent shockwaves of light through the chamber. "I prefer Ambassador Tvalora Trace," she replied with a smile that outshone the crystal walls. "I have a career to maintain, you know." The celebration that followed lasted 3 days, with guests from both worlds sharing food, music, and stories. Evan found himself moved by how naturally the two species seemed to connect when given the chance. Children from both races played together, their laughter echoing through the halls. On their wedding night, in the private chambers of Tvalora's estate, they made love with a passion that had only deepened through their trials. The house around them responded with displays of light that could be seen from orbit, a beacon of hope for the future. "Do you ever regret it?" Tvalora asked later, as they lay entwined beneath blankets that adjusted themselves to their shared body temperature. "Which part?" Evan replied, tracing the natural patterns on her shoulder. "The public claiming, the political upheaval, or marrying the most beautiful woman in the galaxy?" "All of it," she said, but she was smiling. "Never," he assured her. "Though I have to admit, when you grabbed my hand that day, I thought you might be having some kind of diplomatic breakdown." Tvalora laughed, the sound like music in the responsive chambers. "Perhaps I was. The best kind of breakdown, one that led me to you." Outside their window, the twin suns of Zalari Prime set over the crystal city, painting the sky in shades of purple and gold. In the distance, construction had begun on the new human Zalari Cultural Center, a symbol of the cooperation their love had made possible. Their story would become legend on both worlds, the diplomat who claimed her mate in front of thousands, and the human who accepted her heart across the vastness of space. But for now, they were simply two souls who had found their perfect match, ready to face whatever challenges the future might bring together.